in tonight's speech, the president emphasized what his plan can do for those people currently in poverty. Now, for more, let's go to Adam Michel, a Heritage Foundation policy analyst who saw President Trump's speech firsthand. He was in the room tonight. So great of you to join us. What did you make of it? You were there.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. The speech was everything we wanted to hear. He talked about individual tax cuts for every American, but also focused on the economic growth and wage growth that can come from tax reform, cutting the business tax rate down to 20%, bringing profits home from overseas, and just making America a place where businesses want to do business and hire Americans.
So I'm going to put my cards on the table. I agree with all of that. I've been a big proponent of this all along. People on Fox have seen me many times arguing for pretty much exactly this plan. What I'd like to do, though, is get your reaction to some of the arguments that are being put against it, kind of so that our audience is well armed against those who say this isn't going to work. Let's just take one of them, which is that this idea that just cutting taxes is going to lead to more economic growth. That may be true, but there's going to be people who are left out of that. Even if you go back decades, we've had tax cuts. They have boosted the economy, but incomes in America for working Americans have been flat or falling actually for decades. How's it going to be different this time, even if we get the growth that's promised from this tax plan?
So reducing the corporate tax rate and business tax rates in general has been proven time and time again across countries and across states to lead to higher wages for workers. We've seen this across the border in Canada. They've, over the last 15 years, slowly ratcheted down their business tax rates, and we've seen wage growth in Canada exceeding that of neighboring countries. So the examples are out there, and so the CEA report that the president was talking about, his Council of Economic Advisors, that $4,000 that he's talking about of a wage increase for the average American after tax reform is through, that's a real number, and it will materialize.
It's real in one sense, and I'm a supporter of all of this, but it's an average, and an average can hide really big differences. And one of the things that's really been going wrong in our economy is that you've had parts of America that are booming, particularly on the coasts, and other parts that have really not shared in that prosperity, and an average kind of mushes them all together. So how can we be sure that the people who've been left behind will actually benefit this time around?
Well, the current tax code is a code that benefits those rich and powerful that you were just talking about. It's a tax code that is so complicated and so long that the people that can hire the expensive attorneys and the good lawyers are the ones that can get ahead in that system. So it's not just about lowering the tax rate, which has all these benefits, but it's also about simplifying the system and making it so that people know and businesses know what they have to send to Washington at the end of the year.
So here's another argument that people make, which is that corporate profits now are at record levels. Companies have got a huge amount of money. They don't need more money to make the decision to invest. So if you cut their taxes, really the only people that are going to benefit are the owners of the businesses. It's not going to change their behavior because they've already got plenty of money that they could be investing, but they're not.
Yeah, well, one of the pieces of this tax reform is changing our current system where we tax the worldwide profits of all of our businesses. This is where the president talks about bringing home trillions of dollars of profits overseas. This is money that businesses haven't been able to bring back to the United States for fear of getting our internationally high corporate tax rate levied on it. So the current system does distort business activity, but if we can make America an attractive place both for American businesses to bring that money back and invest here, but also for foreign businesses to invest in the United States and hire American workers, that competition for additional workers is what drives up wages and drives the economic growth that the president is talking about.
I buy that argument, particularly about the foreign businesses. I mean, the corporate tax rate is so high, it's the highest in the world, and if you're making a decision about where you're going to locate your business, if you're a foreign business, I think that will have an impact. But again, the critics would point out that we had that kind of cut in the overseas tax, the repatriation. I think it was under the Bush administration. And actually, it didn't lead to more jobs. What it led to was more money for the rich, for the shareholders.
The problem with that temporary repatriation was that it was temporary, and any time we're talking about temporary tax policy, it changes the incentives of businesses. So if we can make a permanent lower corporate tax rate, a permanent move to territorial system, which is what we're talking about, permanent full expensing, which is another piece that the president talked about today, those three pieces will be an amazing incentive for businesses to invest here, which is the foundation for economic growth. So I fully believe that we'll see the sort of economic growth that's being predicted if we can get those three pieces right.
So just remind me what they are again, because I think we need to remember these arguments, because we're going to get a lot of people saying this tax plan is just for the rich. What do we say in response?
It's lowering the corporate tax rate to 20%, which is currently the highest in the industrialized world, pushing businesses overseas. It's moving to a territorial system, which means that businesses can do business in the United States and not be penalized for selling things outside the United States. And then moving to full expensing, which is allowing businesses to deduct all the investments they make fully so that they can invest in new factories, new pieces of equipment, new farm equipment. And this is what really drives economic growth.
Sounds good. Thank you so much, Adam, for setting that out for us so clearly. Really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks for having me on.